As we continue our week celebrating icons and instigators, women who change the world, we're honored this morning to welcome Alyse Nelson, President and CEO of Vital Voices Global Partnership, along with 4 fellows from the Vital Voices Network who will join us on stage shortly. As the co-founder, Ms. Nelson has been with the organization for more than 28 years, also serving as Vice President and Senior Director of Programs before assuming her current role in 2009. Under her leadership, Vital Voices has directly served nearly 50,000 women leaders across 188 countries. Agreed. Alyse is a regular speaker on leadership and global women's issues, having spoken before the United Nations General Assembly, the Clinton Global Initiative, Fortune Most Powerful Women, Oxford Student Union, Forbes 3050, and Women in the World, among others. She has conducted leadership training with women at the Central Intelligence Agency, DFID, the UK Development Agency, Fortune 1000 companies, and at numerous conferences. After brief solo remarks, Alyse will introduce you to the impressive lineup of Vital Voices Fellows who will join us later on stage this morning. It is our honor to host Alyse and her 2 children and all 4 of the Vital Voices Fellows this week on this first visit to Chautauqua for All, made possible by the June and Albert Bonyor Lectureship Fund and the Richard W. and Jeanette D. Collenberg Lectureship Fund. And I believe Jeanette is in the building. Jeanette just turned 95. Happy birthday, Jeanette, and thank you for your generous support. We will begin our program with a video introduction to Vital Voices.
I am a woman.
I am a woman.
I am a woman.
A single voice.
Many have doubted what I'm capable of.
But I saw a problem in my community.
I saw the women of my country being left behind.
The women in Kuwait did not have political rights.
Women were getting raped and they were not getting any justice.
I made a choice.
I made a choice.
I made a choice.
To take action.
I've been able to get justice for child abuse victims.
I help women and their families earn a living where they live.
I've helped more than 27,000 women into business.
I've mentored women so that they're now part of the decision-making process.
We campaigned to obtain full political rights.
We've been able to...
I made a film. I survived the Iraqi
I am a single voice.
I am a single voice. I am a single voice.
And I will be heard.
Well, hello Chautauqua. Wow, it is incredible to be here. I have been hearing about this storied institution actually since I was in college. So as Jordan said, and huge thank you to Jordan, May, and Deborah for creating this incredible week of women who change the world, the icons and the instigators. I can tell you the women who are going to be joined on this stage are truly both of those things. But before I start officially, I want to give a huge shout out to our board member, Megan Smith, who's here. We're so proud to have her on our board. We wouldn't be here without her. She is a lifelong Chautauquan. Megan, where are you? There you are. So, Vital Voices was founded nearly 30 years ago on a simple but yet very powerful idea. We thought that if we could just support women on the front lines of change around the world, we could make things better. We could make the world better. But I think back then, all those years ago, we had no idea that what we were building was created for this very moment in history. Our world is being tested right now by unprecedented challenges. We see a rising tide of authoritarianism around the world. 72% of the world's population live in countries under authoritarian rule. We also have seen a huge rollback of women's rights, not just in this country, but around the world. The climate crisis is at our heels, and conflict is at unprecedented numbers. But over the last 3 decades, Vital Voices has been quietly building a counterforce, a global network of thousands of once-in-a-generation leaders, women who consistently dare to dream and do what others think is simply impossible. These women came to leadership because they saw a problem in their community, like those in the film, and simply couldn't look away. They weren't seeking titles and positions. No, they wanted answers. Answers to the problems that affect their kids, their families, their communities, which makes them precisely the kind of leaders we need right now. In a time of so much cynicism, they spread hope. They believe that we can build something better rather than tearing it all down. And at Vital Voices, we are there to build an infrastructure of support around them. We think of ourselves, as Megan Smith often says, as venture catalysts. We are searching the world for extraordinary women who are taking on some of the world's greatest challenges, from economic inequities to gender-based violence to the climate crisis. And what we do is we build this infrastructure of support around them. We provide them with training, a network of their peers, visibility and credibility, mentors, but we also provide them with grants. And one of the things more recently we've had to provide them with is crisis response. So we are there both on their best days to celebrate and amplify their successes, but also on their worst days. And honestly, when you're supporting a leader over a long period of time, you have to be there on their worst days. And increasingly, women leaders are under attack, both on and offline, as you heard from Nora and Deborah's discussion yesterday. Over the past 29 years, as Jordan says, we've supported 49,000 women leaders, actually across 195 countries. Yeah. And I have been part of Vital Voices for those whole 3 decades. And I think what's been so fascinating for me is that to a person, when we first interact with these women leaders, they say, no, I'm not a leader. No, I shouldn't be part of your program. I'm like, what? No, but you are. No, I'm just a person who gets up every day and sees a challenge in my community and tries to solve it. I just center my community and build support around that. I'm like, well, look, if that ain't leadership, I don't know what is. But you see, when they looked at what leadership was in their communities, they saw something very different. They saw a more hierarchical model of leadership. They saw titles and positions and being born into leadership, right? They saw someone who maybe looked quite different than them. They also saw that the people who were in leadership positions seemed to seek power to have power over, rather than seeking power to empower. And they knew that's what they were doing, is simply seeking power to empower others. They simply didn't see themselves. At the same time, what we started to realize across all these different cultures and countries and sectors and generations of women that we were working with around the world is that there were these commonalities in the way that they were leading change. And of course, it was very different. And once we started to call out these commonalities and share stories of other women leaders, all of a sudden they began to see, okay, wait, maybe I am a leader. And that is the Vital Voices leadership model. That is what it's all about. Vital Voices didn't invent this model that I'm going to talk to you about today, and in a few minutes, you're going to hear from 4 extraordinary women who truly taught us this model. We didn't invent this model. We learned it from women around the world. And what it is it's a series of practices that enable them to lead effective change. What we know is that women lead differently. I didn't say better, different. I think better, but women lead differently, and I think that this difference that women bring, which we're going to talk about in just a minute, is precisely what our world needs today. If we look around the world, we see growing inequities and divides, people feeling disconnected from their leaders, but yet so connected to each other. The world is yearning for a different model of leadership. A model of leadership that is about compassion and inclusion and collaboration, not about chainsaw, rip it all down leadership. No, about empowerment. This is a new model of leadership, a model that, although we've learned from women, I believe is just as relevant for men. It has 5 core practices. First, a driving force or a sense of mission. More often than not, what we find is that women come into their leadership from experience. Like the film, they see something in their community and they can't look away. They weren't planning to lead, but they had to step up to solve that issue. And when you think about the kind of leaders we need in this world right now, we need those authentic leaders. Leaders who know what they're about and why they're stepping forward. And you're going to hear from women across our network talk about why they stepped forward. The second practice of our leadership model that we began to see in women all around the world was that they had deep roots in the community in which they served. And what we mean by that is that they truly understood their community. They went in listening, not talking. They used empathy as a tool. Being able to put themselves in someone else's shoes truly enables them to lead change. The third practice that we began to see around the world, from Northern Ireland to Israel and Palestine to South Africa, is that women have this ability to put ego aside and cross lines that divide. They could be political divides, sector divides, country divides, religious divides. They're able to find that one area, that one space that we connect and work together. And from there, build the trust that's needed to build sustainable change. The fourth practice that we began to see is bold ideas and bold action. I know a number of studies have said, well, maybe women don't take risks, but that's not true. They take risks in a very different way. They take risks when it's about their community, when it's about their children, and we believe that there's a benefit, quite frankly, to historically being left out. You have to think and lead differently. You have innovative solutions. You bring those solutions to age-old challenges. Well, isn't that exactly what's needed in solving those challenges, is innovative ways to do it? The last practice we saw again and again is that women had this great desire, this resolve to pay it forward. They didn't want the support that maybe we'd given to them or others gave to them to end with them. They wanted to pay it forward. They understood that the only meaningful measure of power is the positive impact it can have. And that power truly does expand the moment it's shared. For too long, I think that women leaders have been overlooked and undervalued for precisely the reason we need them most in this moment. They bring new and unconventional solutions to some of our toughest challenges. And more often than not, that is because they are the people most affected, whether it be conflict or climate. And here's the thing, what I've learned in these 30 years is something very simple. You can only change what you know. You can only change what you know. These women change what they know, but not just for themselves, but for entire communities and countries and our world. So let me introduce you to 4 women leaders who are going to be joining me in a discussion today around how this leadership model comes to life. First, please welcome Dr. Kekenya Ntaya. She is founder of Kekenya's Dream in Kenya. Next, please welcome Breeze Liu. She is founder of Electo AI and an extraordinary activist combating gender-based violence online. Next, welcome Leah Lizarrando. Leah Lizarrando is the founder of Food Rescue Hero, and she's also now vice president at Vital Voices, leading our work with our global network. And finally, please welcome founder and social entrepreneur, the founder of Sequence, Ariella Suster. So hi, everyone. Thanks for being here with me and with all our friends. So one of the things that I have learned over the years is that a person's path to leadership is never planned out perfectly. It really starts with an experience and a conviction to do something. And the first thing I want to talk about, I want to get into talking about our driving force, our sense of mission. And I want to actually ask each of those here to tell their stories about how they found their driving force, their sense of mission. But before I do that, I want to tell you mine. So when I was a 21-year-old college student in 1995, yes, you can do the math, believe it or not, there was no internet, not really, not the way we think of it today. And I was so curious about global women's issues. And I heard about something called the United Nations Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing, China. It was going to be the largest gathering of women in history. 55,000 women leaders from around the world were going to be gathered. And I just knew, okay, I got to be there. It was in Beijing, China. I remember I called my dad, and he's like, Beijing, Texas? No. You don't speak Chinese? Yeah. Well, turns out I bought a ticket. I bought a ticket with, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 stopovers before I finally was going to land in Beijing. But turns out buying the ticket was the easy part because I couldn't get a visa. The Chinese government was trying to limit these crazy activists that were going to be showing up in their country. And so they didn't want, too many people. And so they denied people visas. Well, you tell a 21-year-old she can't do something, and now she really wants to do it. So I went down to the Chinese consulate every day and just demanded that I get a visa. And one day, one of the guys at the consulate said, hey, listen, meet me around the corner at the deli in 15 minutes. And I was like, that's really weird. Okay, but you know what? Will not be silenced. I'm going to go to this conference. And I meet him around the corner. He says, look, they are not going to give you a visa because they're just, if they can't recognize the organization that you're from, they're just not going to give you a visa. So go as a tourist. Don't tell anyone that I told you this. Pretend you're going to Shanghai, but go to Beijing, and then just sneak into the conference. They're not going to want to have you lurking around in Beijing and, lurking around the streets and creating trouble. So they'll let you into the conference. And now you can imagine what my father said when I told him. Oh. It's like, okay, so remember, Tiananmen Square was 89? This is 6 years later. My dad's like, oh my gosh, she's going to Beijing. This is crazy. But I went. I met this amazing woman named Gertrude Fester. She had been a big advocate for combating apartheid on the plane. She helped me get in. She helped me get a room, and it was so funny. I was in a compound of probably about 1,000 women who were staying out by the conference, and it was all African women because they kind of separated all the women into, Africa, Asia, and here I was, the little white girl with, all these African women. It was amazing. The conference was incredible. But one of the things that I realized, surrounded by these 55,000 women activists from all over the world, as I was standing among them, I said, these women didn't come to learn as I did. They came to fight. So why did I want to come? And on the last day of the conference, I got my answer. I had been listening to all of these young women talking about the challenges that they were facing, talking about girls' education, talking about human rights and human trafficking, issues that people just didn't know about back home. But I wondered, why did I feel compelled to come all this way? And on the last day of the conference, I got my answer, and I learned a lesson that has stayed with me to this day. And it was when I heard Hillary Clinton speak. And in that speech, there she is. In 1995, remember, she said women's rights are human rights, but she did something even more powerful. She recognized in a pre-social media era, the only voice that's going to get out there from this conference is probably hers. So she needed to use that speech to raise the voices of all of these other women. She recognized she had power. She could use that power to give voice, to give power to women around the world and the issues they were facing. And I realized in that moment, I don't have Hillary Clinton's power or voice, but I have a voice, and I can use it. And I can go back and I can create spaces for women's voices to be heard. And that became my driving force. I, just a year later, moved down to Washington, D.C., and started an internship at the White House working for Secretary Clinton. I then moved out of the government and moved over to the State Department, actually out of the White House, moved to the State Department to start up Vital Voices. And that was 30 years ago. And I'm still on this path. And I'm still on this path because of the women sitting here beside me. Kekenya, I want to turn to you because you too have an extraordinary story of how you found your driving force. When I met you, I remember you told me that story. And I just thought, okay, I'm with this woman, whatever it is she needs. Tell us the story.
Thank you, Alyse, and good morning, Chautauqua. I want to give a shout out to amazing aunties that I met yesterday, Amy and Erin from Mississippi. And I want to talk to you about my own driving force. I grew up in a rural Maasai community. For those who have been to Kenya, you know the Maasais. We are very famous. We jump high, and the story goes on. In this community, the only known role for women is to be a wife and to be a mother. Girls in this community go through the female genital mutilation as a rite of passage to then transition into marriage, dropping out of school, and giving up all the dreams that they have had. I was engaged at the age of 5. Was supposed to be married when I reached 12. But I had to negotiate with my father that I would only go through female genital cutting if he allows me to go back to school. I had seen how my mother was abused. I had seen how girls and women were just living a very difficult life, and I wanted a different one. And so my dad reluctantly agreed, and I went to school. I worked very hard, and eventually I got a scholarship to study in the US. I became the first woman in my village to leave my country and to arrive in the United States. I was so happy to be here, away from the girls who are getting married and all the stories that are going on in Kenya. But in the classrooms that I was in, it was the first time I learned about female genital cutting. I learned that I shouldn't have gone through it. I learned that girls had the right to go to school. I learned about laws in my own country that were there to protect girls, were there to protect women, and they were not in my village. And so I studied, I continued with my education from my undergraduate, and then I graduated from University of Pittsburgh with a PhD, and returned back to my home country to change the story for girls. I wanted to end FGM, I wanted to end female genital cutting, as I said, I want to end child marriage, and I wanted to give girls an opportunity to thrive and live their full potential.
Amazing. So Breeze, I want to come to you now, because I think a driving force, I mean, I talked about mine, just, an experience, but it can also come from tragedy. Talk a little bit about your driving force and why you believe this is your destiny to work on the issues that you work on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Alyse. And I'm so happy to be here. It's a great honor. So as many of you might have known, nearly 90 years ago, on this very ground at Chautauqua, Franklin Roosevelt said, "I hate war." He had seen what happens when human beings build machines of destruction faster than they build systems of conscience. In the age of AI, I have experienced a different kind of war, a war against human dignity, and I am here to say we do not have to accept it as inevitable. In April 2020, my life changed forever. Someone told me that a pornographic video of me was circulating online. I thought it was a mistake, but when I clicked the link, I saw my face on a pornographic video, and there is no words to describe how I was feeling. The devastation is impossible to even describe. My entire world collapsed, so I went to the rooftop of my building and decided to end my life. But at that moment, it was my great-grandmother's story that gave me the strength to carry on. And should I tell the story now? Yes. So my great-grandmother was born in 1908 during the final years of the Qing dynasty in China. As a child, she went through something called foot binding. It is a brutal practice designed to humiliate and silence women, so they became breeding machines. And it's a brutal practice that have lasted nearly 1,000 years in China. And she survived smallpox, lived through the wars, the change of regimes, and the collapse of an empire. But through all of this, she never gave up, and she never surrendered hope. She passed away in 1999, just before the dawn of a new millennium, and because of her strength and perseverance, I get to sit before you today, across the world, educated, free, and able to tell my story.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Leah, I want to come to you. Talk a little bit about how you developed your driving force.
Yeah, so what I'm realizing as I'm sitting here is that we are all immigrants. And I grew up in the Philippines, and I think the story always starts what was it, when I was 16. And my father, so he would give us, the way he would give us the world was he would subscribe to Life magazine and National Geographic and just allow us to take a peek, of the world beyond where we were. And then one day I remember seeing New York City as the feature, and I was so fascinated. It was like, look at this city. It's so alive on the pages. And it was unlike anything I've ever seen. And I remember that day, how National Geographic has these pull-out things. And I pulled out the map of Manhattan. And I put it on my wall, you know, next to my poster of Duran Duran. And I said, you know, one day I'll live there. And I guess today that's called manifesting. And you know, 10 years later, my life direction went there, and I did move there. And I was a first-generation immigrant. I had no family. I just, through work, was able to do it. And I always say, with 2 suitcases and a dream, that poster, you know, when I was 16, I realized it, and I landed in New York City. And it was everything that it was in the magazine. But one of the things that was so uncomfortable was, you know how when, you know, you have these shiny photos, and then suddenly, like, you realize that there's something cropped out of the photos. And what was cropped out was, I started to see them, you know, it was really stark. You know, I would, you know, these financial buildings and people in suits, but, you know, there were soup kitchens, there were lines out the door. And then I remember the first time I saw a mom and a child going into a dumpster, trying to get food. And then I realized, you know, and I know this is a pejorative term, but then, you know, they were calling the Philippines a third world country. But what I was realizing was that within this first world country is a third world country that no one talks about. And I think what was, you know, even more shocking that I realized was that there's so much abundance here. So much that we throw it out. And in 2012, I learned this staggering statistic. It's like, how do we connect it into our heads? It was dissonant, this abundance and this need in such a rich country. And then in 2012, I learned this staggering statistic. I don't know if you all know this. It's like, we throw away up to 40% of our food that we grow. So we're feeding landfills, not people. And it was at that time, you know, I was, who's from Pittsburgh here? Raise your hands. Hello, Pittsburgh. I went to Carnegie Mellon, and, you know, and Kenya went to the University of Pittsburgh, I learned as well. And learn, like Breeze, which you'll hear later, you know, that there's all these tools we can use. And I thought, what if hunger is not a production problem, but a distribution problem, right? And I learned that one of the other statistics that the UN measured is that if we recover all of this food that is getting thrown out, we would feed everyone in the world 4 times over. So we must solve this problem if there's hunger. And that's really the force. It's like, you know, when I hear driving force, the other thing that comes into my head is, you know, with all of these women that you'll hear, is that when you get the idea, when you see what I would call the light, you can't close your eyes and unsee it. Just like Alyse's dream to, like, I'm going to Beijing, I'm not gonna be deterred. I couldn't sleep anymore. It's like there was this solution that came, and then we can talk about it more later, but it's, you know, it's essentially, you know, using Uber and DoorDash and using it to recover food.
Wow. Ariella.
First of all, I want to thank you all for listening to our stories. I think you're getting a glimpse of different parts of the world, and I'm so honored to be sitting next to all these incredible women and their stories of resilience and bravery. You know, I grew up in El Salvador during the Civil War, and my family experienced violence firsthand, from shootings in our home to car bombs to my brother being kidnapped. For me, my driving force was stemmed from what you would call a tragedy, something that my family went through that was hell on earth for a year. And after my brother was released, I went to school in the United States. My dad always placed such importance in education, so I had the opportunity to come here. I went to Skidmore and then Harvard and then worked in fashion for many years in magazines like Harper's Bazaar and InStyle magazine. But I always felt that there was something missing, that I couldn't find my voice. I was always struggling to fit in to, somebody else's story. And I knew that I needed to go back to El Salvador and address an issue of violence that at that point was affecting my country, and that was gang violence, and particularly young men joining gangs, going into a cycle that was only leading to prison or death. And I knew that I wanted to break that cycle. So I created Sequence, my company of handcrafted jewelry and accessories, with the mission to disrupt the cycle of violence that limits at-risk youth. And at that point, I set up my workshop in what was gang territory. And for my family and friends, they were so worried. They're like, you finally went to the US, you finally got out of El Salvador, why are you now coming back and going inside gang territory and, putting your life at risk? But it's what we've been talking about. It's something bigger than you. It's a force, and it's something that, as the years have gone by, this project, I started it 10 years ago. And now life and love have taken me to Cape Town, South Africa. And I'm continuing that mission. I'm continuing to figure out a way to disrupt these cycles of violence for at-risk youth.
Thank you. Wow. You hear their stories, and now you know why I continue on this journey for 30 years, having the opportunity to be surrounded by these extraordinary women. But here's the thing. I believe that all of us have a driving force. We may have not found it yet, but it's there. It's a reason for being. It's our personal mission for why we are on this planet. And I believe strongly that when we tap into that, if all of us can tap into that, we can truly change the world for the better. I want to talk about the next practice of our leadership model, and I want to have Kenya talk about it in particular. It's this idea of having really deep roots in the community that I was talking about, the idea of going in and listening. And one of the things that Nora said yesterday, she said that stories shape culture and community. There's a wonderful African proverb that says that if you want to change culture, if you want to understand culture, listen to the stories. If you want to change culture, change the stories. You understood that so well, and you know the only way to make the change that you were able to make in Kenya, in your village, was truly going to the heart of the culture.
Thank you again, Alyse, and thank you all for your inspirational stories. So I was going back to Kenya. As I said, I had finished. I got this, beautiful academic and understanding and how to change education. And I arrived to the village and wanted to solve the issues that, female genital cutting, child marriage, girls getting married. When I'm talking about child marriage, these are girls getting married at 13 years old, 14-year-olds. This is the normal. This is part of our culture. This is part of our identity. This is part of our history. So it's like, how do you go and just change that? So I realized quickly that, and I had learned from how I fought for my own personal education, is that I needed to bring the people in the community to be part of that change. One thing that I understood is that I didn't go to end FGM. I wanted to find a common ground, and the common ground was, let's put the girls to school. We can all understand, girls can continue to school. And once the girls, we founded a school. My organization is called Kenya's Dream. In the initial stages, we founded a school in 2009, and everybody seems to understand. But the biggest challenge I was facing is that no woman or a girl or anyone who is like trying to do such change in the community, no one has built a school. So they're kind of like, there were stories that men would hold, and there would be stories that, they go around and they want to see how I'm going to fail. And quickly I realized that I wasn't going to lead alone. So I started I knew that the chief is like the key person in the community. And I would show up in his house, and we would talk about everything else. And I go, do you understand that I am trying to bring a school for girls? And I really sold my ideas to him. And once he owned it, he's able then to speak on my behalf to other men and other communities. So they all came together. We built a school for girls. And then when the girls started approaching puberty, this is when now the community started preparing them to get through FGM. And I told them that these girls are doing really, really well in school. So we would always bring the fathers especially to look at how the girls are doing well in math and science. And I started getting proud of their girls. And I told them that, so what do you think is going to hinder this girl from pursuing her best in life? That's when we start tackling FGM. That's when we start talking about child marriage and things like that. And before you know it, it took a very long time to really show what a girl looks like who has not gone through FGM, because there had not been any who had gone through FGM. And this was like, FGM is like the thing that really gives you the status in the community. So you can't just take it away. So the parents came along with me. They owned the stories. They owned the power for the education of their girls. Our girls now, we have educated over 1,000 girls who have gone.
Did you hear that? She has educated 1,000 girls.
So the 1,000 girls are actually free from FGM, and the 1,000 girls mean it's 10,000. It's 1,000 homes. That means girls in their homes, because the girls started defending their own sisters, and then the just ripple effect that continues to go. But I realized that I couldn't just focus on the girls. I started also working with the boys, because eventually is that if you take the girls out of the community, how will they come back? So I needed the community to be rooted. So I really worked with the boys, I worked with mothers, I worked with the men. We have this dialogue, and now in my community, it is okay for men to say, we want to educate our girls. They're stepping up and they're saying no to FGM. So we've reached thousands of girls. We have 2 schools, we have a health clinic. We just started changing the story for girls, and each one of the girls now some of them have graduated. They're teachers in the school that we are in. Some of them are nurses, some of them are doctors. Now the village and the girls are seeing role models who are free from FGM, who are free from child marriage, and the story is now very different, that they're seeing how that woman can lead. And so that's really what I did.
Incredible, incredible. So 18 years ago, I traveled with Kenya to break ground on this school. And I mean, it was planes, trains, automobiles, jeeps, et cetera, to get there. It was not easy. And every man in the village came up to me and said, I'm her brother, I'm her father, I'm her uncle. And I was like, wow, this is success. Everybody wanted to be connected to her. And I knew at that moment that she had done the groundwork to make sure this was a success. And it takes time. 18 years later?
Yes.
2 years from now, next summer, any of you interested, we're taking a trip back to Kenya's village, because I was there when they broke ground, and I want to see all the campuses. It's incredible what she's built, and that's staying power. So I want to turn next to you, Breeze. I want to talk about the idea of crossing lines that divide, and how the power of putting ego aside, putting sort of identity aside, and finding commonality across the differences, and why that's so critical for leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to go back a little bit to how I started my company. So you remember I talked about my great-grandmother. That was over 100 years ago. So despite all the things that have changed in the last century, some forms of oppression actually remain familiar but evolved. So today, 98% of deepfakes are pornographic, and 99% target women. We may have ended foot binding decades ago, but gender-based violence still exists in another form. And deepfake abuse is foot binding in the digital form, designed to control, silence, and humiliate us. So when I sought justice, I was victim blamed. The police actually asked me if I were a prostitute. I went to UC Berkeley. And I was told that justice wasn't an option and no solution existed. So I decided to build one. I created Electo AI. It's a tech solution to help victims fight back, but I soon realized technology alone wasn't enough. So the deeper challenge wasn't technical, it was human. And the real change would require building bridges. And for 5 years, across 2 presidential administrations, I worked with people who disagreed about politics. Also presidents who disagreed with each other. I've met them both. It's very interesting. And they disagreed about politics, technology, and almost everything else. But I discovered something very interesting. Across every line that divides us, we all love our children. We want dignity. We want safety. And as JFK said to a world far more divided than ours during the Cold War, let us not be blind by our differences. Let us direct attention to our common interest and to the means by which those differences can be resolved. So instead of beginning with our disagreements, we began with our shared humanity. Democrats and Republicans, survivors and senators, parents, prosecutors, advocates, and even big tech companies. So all of these people who disagreed on almost everything agreed on one simple truth. Human dignity is not partisan. And by connecting across the lines that divide us, we passed the Take It Down Act with overwhelming bipartisan support. So we passed Senate unanimously, and we passed Congress almost unanimously. And last year, that was a very partisan time. And last year, I stood next to the president when he signed this bill into law. I'm a Chinese immigrant at the White House, watching a law that I helped create become the law of the land. It was an extraordinary moment, but the greatest... Thank you. But the greatest victory actually wasn't the legislation itself. It was proving that people who disagree can still come together to solve problems that matter. And that is what gives us hope. Because if we can do it in Congress, we can do it anywhere. So I believe the pioneers of AI are the Prometheus of our age. They have given humanity fire. Fire transforms life. It's extraordinary, but it also burns. And when it burns the most vulnerable among us, the question is not whether we're still powerful, is whether we're still human, is whether we're still civilized. And anthropologist Margaret Mead once suggested that the earliest sign of civilization was not a weapon or a tool, but a healed femur bone. So a broken femur in the wild means death, but a healed one tells a different story. It means someone have decided to stay against all the instincts and decided to help this person, nurture them back to health. And it means someone cared, someone have given another person enough time to recover. Civilization is not defined by what we create, what we invent, what we conquer. It was defined by how we care for one another.
Wow.
So I know a lot of people out there are terrified of what's happening in the world these days, are terrified of artificial intelligence and what it could entail. And AI is one of the most powerful technologies that humanity has ever created. And whether it deepens our divisions or strengthens our humanity depends on what we do next. I also hate war, just like FDR. But some things are worth fighting for. Dignity, liberty, and humanity's unyielding hope.
Thank you. Wow. So I want to turn now to Leah to talk a little bit about bold ideas and bold action. And just to refresh your memory, this is very much about how, you can't just have a big idea, you got to take the action to make it happen. And you're going to hear a hell of a lot of no's. Nora talked about that yesterday, and Deborah talked about that. But you got to keep fighting for the yes. And the solutions that haven't been tried are very much those that will make the breakthrough. So, Leah.
Yeah, so yes on the nose. So seeing this, wasted food and hunger on the other side, I thought it was a very simple idea because we were all using Uber and DoorDash, and the simple idea was, well, why can't we use it to take extra food and then have someone drive it and then bring it to a shelter or an orphanage or a church? And everyone said, no, that's not gonna work. There's too much food, you're not gonna get enough drivers, the food perishes, too fast. And then my very, very favorite is you cannot rely on volunteers. And so I researched that. Is that true? Do you know that 60% of firefighters in the United States are volunteers? And so we tested this idea, right? I believe we can. And so we started small on Facebook and Twitter and what have you. And it was mostly our friends at first, right? Kind of showing up and picking up the food from a bagel place, bringing it to a shelter. And then we decided though, but then it grew. And then it became 100 people because our friends told their friends. And so we decided, okay, well then let's build an app like DoorDash. And I knew the exact moment it was going to work was when we released the app, and the very first person who actually accepted a rescue that none of us knew, which means somebody out there was answering the call and looking at this app and saying, oh, I'll take those bagels and bring it to a shelter. And then it just grew, and it just grew, and it just grew. And there's one of our most dedicated first food rescue heroes, as we call it, in the audience, Patty Lemmer. Where is she? Oh, there's Patty. Longtime Chautauquan as well. And the next thing we knew, there were 60,000 people all over the United States on the app rescuing food. 350 million pounds of food on over a decade. And then in September, we will be celebrating our 1 millionth trip. So it's really, as Bree said, it's not even about the tech. It's about the humans, right? It's not remarkable technology. It's been done. It's remarkable people. We have to believe in ourselves. All of those people who said, you can't do this, every day people are showing up and proving that right. So when you talk about, bold idea, we all have bold ideas. I certainly am sure that you have an app idea. The bold action is just taking that first step. And I think what we invite you all today is for you to do that.
Thank you, Leah. Wow. Ariella, we want to talk about our last practice with you around a resolve to pay it forward. That feeling that this can't end with me. I have to support others, reach out to others. Talk about that in your leadership path.
Yes, I think for me, paying it forward goes back to a life-changing experience. As I shared a little while ago, my brother in El Salvador was kidnapped. He was held captive for a year. He was blindfolded and handcuffed. He was 15 years old. I was 16 years old. And there was something that happened that was so incredible, and that was his high school friends during that year sent a letter to the kidnappers. We didn't know if we were going to get my brother back. They sent that letter, and the newspaper ran it. And it ignited a movement that we never saw coming. People all across our country started to rally and demanded for my brother to be released. They were holding concerts, prayers. Everybody was wearing a yellow ribbon. And what was so incredible for me was to see people in all socioeconomic levels, people who were struggling with violence and poverty themselves, showing up for a family they hadn't even met. And so that stood with me, and that, was to my core. So I knew as I was living in the United States, I needed to go back to El Salvador and pay it forward for that community that had shown up for me. And paying it forward meant going back to El Salvador and started Sequence in a, violent environment, in a gang-ridden community, employing what I thought at the beginning, because of the nature of our products, which was bracelets, necklaces, and fashion products, I thought it was going to be women that were going to show up. But it was mostly men, and it was young men who were coming to handcraft our pieces, not just jewelry, but to change their lives, to become agents of change, and to pay it forward for their community. And also a young woman named Judy, who came to our workshop from a gang-ridden community. She learned the craft and is now, 8 years later, one of the leaders of our workshop. There's her amazing picture. She's also started her own business and is now mentoring young women in her community. And that's what paying it forward looks like. So, I want to ask you, how will you pay it forward? As I look around this room, I see so much wisdom, I see so much experience, and sometimes paying it forward isn't just about money or resources. It's about showing up for somebody or speaking about somebody's work when they're not in the room. The biggest movements began because one person showed up for the other. My brother was released because people showed up. Sequence, my business, started and exists because people showed up. You showed up today, Now, the question isn't if you have the power to change somebody else's trajectory. The question is, whose trajectory will you change?
Wow. Wow. So I'm going to invite Jordan to join us and take some questions from the audience. But before I do that, I just want to say, Gallup released a report, a global Gallup survey last year, and it asked people all over the world, what is the thing you need most from your leaders? By and far, you know what people said? 56% of people who responded said, I need hope. I desperately need hope. These are the leaders we need today. And in addition to the 4 that are sitting here, imagine a network around the world, the Vital Voices Global Network, of 49,000 women leaders like this. Women walking among us, getting to work, doing the hard work, staying the course. Join us. Be part of this movement. Jordan.
So we will transition to our traditional moderated audience Q&A. We know some of you will be moving on to your next activity at Chautauqua. There's lots to do. And if that is you, please just do so quietly out of respect for those who are staying behind and for our speakers on stage here. A reminder, you can still submit questions. Our ushers will now be circulating. They have slips of paper and pencils and can collect them and bring them to May, who is supporting me with Q&A. You can also submit on the questions portal at questions.chq.org. Alyse, and then maybe we can sort of go down the line or see who else would like to address this. Some questions have come in about what practical support does Vital Voices provide? Funding, professional development, and then maybe some of the fellows can speak to the impact of that support.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, you answer it, go.
So I think one of the things that also, the part of the story that I want to tell, which is echoing what Ariella said about paying it forward, is that after being part of the network as a fellow for a decade while building Food Rescue Hero and meeting these women, what I wanted to do to pay it forward was to actually support all of these women. Now I told Alyse, can I be part of Vital Voices? Because there's nothing more I want to do now than to provide support. And to Jordan's question, what we do, I know all of you have things you're passionate about. education, gender-based violence, social enterprise. There's 49,000 women all over the world that need your support in the cause that you love, that you are passionate about. And we provide them with mentorship. We provide them with leadership training, all that it entails, how to safeguard their organizations, how to build it. We introduce them to a network of other women leaders so they can support each other. We introduce them to you who support their causes. And then we provide them, as Alyse said, more and more gender-based violence is happening, and this is a way to silence leaders. We provide them with crisis response when they are facing things like Breeze unfortunately had to face. So those are just some of the supports we give women.
I think, in the moments when I felt like nobody believed in me, or where I was doing the work for so long on the ground and nobody cared, I think the first people who cared were Vital Voices and opened the doors and opportunities to so many incredible programs, mentors, incredible mentors that have also opened doors for me and for my business. And I think the most valuable thing that Vital Voices gives is that, that support, unwavering support in times when nobody will show up for you. I think it's one of the only organizations that truly, truly cares and uplifts the work that we're doing.
I think one of the things that I'm most proud of with Vital Voices is that we don't go into a community and say, here are the problems and we know the solutions, right? No. We go into communities and we find the leaders who are building it, because we understand what Kenya talked about, that I can't end FGM in Kenya, in her village, no way. She understands the culture, the community, right? And so our model is not, okay, we have the idea. Our model is get behind the people who have the ideas. Give them voice, platform, training, financial support. And yes, be there on their worst days too. Provide crisis support, because that's what it's going to take. And it's a long journey. And so we are with them on that journey. As Kenya and I were talking about, we met 18 years ago. That's how long we've been on this journey together. And that's what it takes.
Breeze, this next one is directed to you, and I invite any of the others to chime in as well. This audience member says, my granddaughters, ages 3, 2, and 1, will grow up into our social media and AI-infected world. How can we help them overcome what you so appropriately called the war of human dignity?
That's a wonderful question. So I know, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to be very brief. So I believe as we continue to connect across the lines that divide us and care for one another, even when the age of AI is upon us, the light of humanity shall never die. That is my answer. Short and simple.
So the next question is for Leah. There are questions about what is the food rescue app called, and how can I access it, and how can I potentially implement it in my own community?
Yes, so it's called Food Rescue Hero, so download it. Currently it's in 30 cities in the United States and in Vancouver in Canada. It's definitely in Pittsburgh. I'm not sure if it's in Buffalo. But cities all over the US, you can find the city, see if your city is in there, and if it's not, you can start it. I will help you. We will help you. That's why we have an app that is turnkey, and you'll be able to start a food rescue in your own community very, very easily.
Excellent. Ariella, are any of your products being sold here at Chautauqua, anywhere in the US?
Yay! Thank you for this question. So tomorrow, it's going to be really fun. I'm giving a workshop at 3:30, and you'll be able to make bracelets, necklaces. You're also going to be able to meet my team over Zoom. They're going to be, the artists from El Salvador are going to be able to interact with you, and I'll have products there as well to sell. So tomorrow, 3:30.
4 o'clock, she will be setting up at 3:30, so don't show up quite that early. It's okay. So, and that's just a good reminder that we do have 2 opportunities to re-engage with 2 of our fellows on stage here. Kenya will be in Holtquist this afternoon at 4 p.m. You all can sign up for that or register at the door. And then, as Ariella just mentioned, she will be tomorrow, Wednesday, at 4 p.m. at the Holtquist Center. The next question was for you, Kenya. Have you been able to bring the changes you brought to your village to other villages throughout Kenya?
Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful question. It took us a long time to build the systems and to build the trust that we wanted to build within the community. We invest in the girls from the time that they're in 4th grade, and we follow you through to your first destination, college, and really, really mentor you and really work with you. Our goal is to have them have a livelihood. And so we work a lot. It takes a lot of work. But 2 years ago, we came together, and now because we have a model, we are actually now expanding our work to other villages. So we used to be in 1 sub-county. We are currently in 4 sub-counties. So going beyond the Maasais, we work with the Kalenjins, and we work with all communities that are practicing FGM. So we've been able to really go in and identify, as Alyse says, who are the key leaders there, who are the people that can actually take ownership and really follow and work with us. Change takes time. We need to have a lot of patience. And I think it's something that I've really learned along the way. I can talk to you about like a father who, his name is Momboshi, who when the girls we were taking in 4th grade, she never wanted her daughter to come to the school, but the mother insisted. So the girl came to school, the mother kept coming. We invite the parents to come to parents' meetings so that they can see the girls' results and things like that. But over time, it just kept, at some point, the girl did really well in the national exam. And I found that this guy showed up with a car celebrating the girl who he had never come to his parents' meeting. And the story had changed for him, because then from there on, she was able to take her daughter to high school. The girl ended up doing very well. She ended up getting a scholarship in Sydney, Australia. She is now a cybersecurity analyst and doing amazing work. And her mother, who never stepped in a class, was able to get on a plane, go visit her daughter, and see a different world. And that's like real stories that takes time to build. And now that we have the stories, we're able to share broad. So yeah, we are expanding to many more communities.
A questioner is asking, how do we not leave young men behind, young men who are struggling? And can some or all of you talk about how your work has maybe follow-on impacts on men and young men in particular, or even direct impact?
So my work is directly with young men. Most of the people who we employ are young men, and I think I started this with the mission of disrupting the cycle of violence, and I knew when I went back to El Salvador that those were the young men that were getting involved in violence, and it was key to work with them, and it was key for me to provide those opportunities. I think, as I expand the vision of Sequence, and now in South Africa, the vision will continue. I think it's important in our communities to work with women, but it is as important to work with young men. I think in order for it to generate change, I think we have to work with both, and both have equal opportunities. And I think in communities like El Salvador, there's a lot of violence and a lot of young men lacking role models, lacking mentors, lacking fathers. And I think, as I continue to see, I think for the men in the audience, there's great opportunity to mentor other young men, maybe in your community or in different parts of the world. So, you can also be part of that change.
And I think I'll briefly say, to that question too, I have 2 sons. One is 21 and one is 13. And I think the language of, men in the internet who are disaffected, who are trying to make it about men versus women, that's the danger. And when you hear women, within Vital Voices, and as I talk to my sons about the work that women do, it is never against men. It is, we actually need their support. It's not a zero-sum game. It is a rising tide. It is a pie that grows. And it's that language that counters all of the disaffected language on the internet that is very, very important to ensure that all of us, men and women, live in a better world.
Absolutely. And I would say one of the things that we do at Vital Voices, each year we have our Solidarity Awards, where we honor great men who are using their platform, their position, their power to end gender-based violence, change culture, to be more inclusive and value women greater. And the reason we do that is because one of our fellows years ago said to me, she said, the vast majority of men are good. The vast majority of men want girls to be educated, want women to be paid fairly, don't want gender-based violence to exist, but the vast majority are silent. We don't hear about them. So what we need is that silent majority of men to rise up and to support women. And the men that do that, we spotlight them and support them. We have a Solidarity Council as well, because we know we can't do this alone. Women leaders need mentors who are men, need sponsors and supporters and allies who are men, absolutely. And we have sons, and we know the critical role that they have to play and the lessons they need to learn as they grow. So know that men are a core part of this solution and a core part of the work that we do at Vital Voices.
I will note that this is the only time you will see me on stage this week. I made sure it was the day I was outnumbered 5-1. That was intentional. I'm very grateful to my powerful women colleagues who are going to be taking the reins on stage from here. In our closing moments, if you all could just take a brief moment each to tell this audience how they can support your work, starting with Vital Voices, with you, Alyse, and then each of the organizations and initiatives we've discussed today.
Thank you. Well, I would say spread the word. I don't know how many of you here had ever heard of Vital Voices before today, right? So spread the word. We have 2 Vital Voices books. I saw one's in the bookstore. I don't think they have a lot of copies though, but you can order them online. Go to our website, vitalvoices.org, support our work, get involved, sign up for our newsletter, just get engaged, help us spread the word. Thank you.
Come to the workshop at 4 is one of them. And then if you want to shop online for our products, it's Sequence, like sequence of events, sequencecollection.com. And again, please support Vital Voices, because through Vital Voices, we get a ton of support.
For me, download the Food Rescue Hero app, talk to Patty, go find her walking around the neighborhood about her experience being a food rescue hero. And after this, for Vital Voices, if you have a cause that you're passionate about, I can introduce you to women who are working in that cause. Please, come and invite me to coffee, and I'm so happy to share with you the work that women are doing all over the world.
My company is called Alecto AI, A-L-E-C-T-O, Alecto AI, and I'm here to support all of you, actually. If you're yourself or your children, grandchildren, have experienced some kind of tech-facilitated abuse, men or women, it doesn't matter which gender, we help all of them. You can use Alecto AI. We provide help to victims, survivors for free.
My organization is Kakenya's Dream, so my first name and then Dream. You can support us by getting in there and signing up for the newsletter, which you get inspirational stories on a monthly basis that can really help you connect with the work that we are doing on the ground. I also challenge each one of you, I think Ariella already talked about, is that if you are in a neighborhood or you are in a place where think about who are you supporting, who are you mentoring, who are you coaching, who is the next person, because every person who is behind you needs somebody to be to uplift them. So mentor somebody, coach somebody to get, I tell my girls to be better than me. And then the third place, of course, support Vital Voices, because they've been with us. They are there forever, and they continue to open spaces. And finally, if you hear somebody needing a speaker to speak, I'm here. I can come to your neighborhood. I can come and speak. I can share our work. And again, share as much as you can. And so let's learn from each other. Thank you.
Chautauqua, will you please help me thank Alyse, Ariella, Leah, Breeze, and Kakenya?